Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Roxy Darling and I make videos of things I create. In this video I'll show you how I sculpted and constructed a soft body art doll. This art doll was inspired by clowns and bats. The inspiration for this piece came when I was scrolling through Pinterest and I came across a pair of dolls that had the heads, hands and feet sculpted and had a soft body made out of a material that was similar to cotton duct, which is a canvas. And so I went through my box of doll heads that I had already cast from a previous sculpt, and I decided to use the one that was just the head so I could construct the neck and shoulders out of a harder material for this doll. The first thing I needed to do was measure out the head and sketch out the approximate size of the body so I could then make a template for the soft body to sew and the hands and feet to sculpt. I grabbed one of my dolls that had a similar size head and decided to use her hands and feet as a size reference for my template. Once the templates were ready, I grabbed some 22 gauge wire and began cutting those into 10 pieces for constructing the hands, obviously 5 for each hand. And to create the wrist, I just grabbed some pliers and twisted all the wires together and then separated the untwisted wire to begin construction of the hands. I left them pretty long so I had some stuff to work with because we're getting pretty tiny, and I also decided to label them left and right so I wouldn't get the thumb parts mixed up because I've met myself before. I used some sewing thread to wrap around the wire, mainly for the finger parts because I want the polymer clay to have something to stick to. I also used liquid polymer clay just to make sure. You can see on my template that I have lines drawn just to the knuckles, so I'm only going to focus on the wrist to the knuckles, and that's so I can build up a base, a thin base, before I start bending the wire to form the curve of the fingers. All right, now these are ready to go in the oven and we will have our first layer. After they were baked, I snipped off the extra ends and curved the fingers how I wanted them to be. And now very tiny, tiny, tiny pieces of polymer clay are being added on. I'm using a toothpick, obviously. It tends to be my favorite tool when I'm working so small. And of course, every Batgirl needs some teeny tiny claws, you know, for protection. And look how cute this is. Like, this is when I fell in love with sculpting tiny hands and feet. Well, I haven't sculpted the feet yet in this video, but I'm obsessed, y'all. This is like hilarious. I had a lot of fun with this piece. After the hands were primed and painted with acrylic, I used 3 layers of acrylic varnish, very glossy, because I wanted these to be very glossy. You could use resin. I don't use resin because my cat and I both have respiratory issues, so trying to go as non-toxic as possible. I do realize a lot of makers out there love to use resin, so if that's the route you want to go, you do you. As with the hands, I'm also going to be doing my little polymer clay builds in layers. So the first layer I will be referring to as the chicken feet layer because they kind of just look like 2 fingers of chicken feet. Yeah, so ignore how goofy they look. They end up better. I did switch clays, and it's not because I felt that they needed to be different. I just had the Super Sculpey in a Ziploc bag, and then when I went to bake it, I stood up and I have lost that Ziploc bag and I can't find it anywhere, and I'm now using translucent Sculpey, and I don't like it. It's floppy and it doesn't hold the sculpt as much, so shout out to Super Sculpey. I like you much better than standard Sculpey. Once I get these sculpt where I want it, I do spend a good bit of time with some clay softener, smoothing it out as much as possible, because the more I smooth it out, the less I have to sand, and I hate sanding. I hate the way it feels. It feels like it dries out my skin and icky. And I have to sand it a lot because it's going to be glossy. And if you do something with a high gloss on it and it has any divots or scratches, those are just going to be amplified. And now it's time to work on the face. Since this is going to be a bat girl, she needs bat ears. And I drew these out on some tracing paper just to see if this was the size that I wanted. I did end up deciding that these were going to be too small, and I went with a bigger template in the end. And yeah, and since I still couldn't find my Super Sculpey, I rolled out some white Sculpey and attach the ears with liquid Sculpey. And I realized I just said Sculpey like 10 times. Sorry about it. also am going to say Sculpey a few more times. I did use the liquid Sculpey to paint around the ears to give it more of a rounded effect rather than trying to sculpt it. I've just realized I enjoy using the liquid Sculpey as a sculpting medium as well as a glue. And then of course, once it was baked, it was time to prime and then begin construction of the neck and shoulders, which will be the part that attaches to the future soft body. To make this connection really sturdy, I started off with some craft mesh and I taped the ends because it kept stabbing me and I got tired of that. Once I have it all kind of curved to fit the shape of the future body, I check everything out and make sure it's the right size, and then I'm going to cover everything with epoxy sculpt because it is much sturdier than Sculpey. I feel it is appropriate time to let you know that this video is not sponsored by Epoxy Sculpt or Sculpey. I just happen to say it a lot, and if you want to turn it into a drinking game, I highly suggest you do. Earlier, I forgot to add holes for the connection part, and so before the epoxy sculpt cured, I did put some holes in there with an awl, and then once it was cured, I put some primer on it, and then it was time to start focusing on the body. I already had the pattern sketched out for the body. I needed to iron out some muslin, and I folded 2 sheets of that and sketched out the pattern on that fabric. The reason it's all on one piece of fabric rather than individually is I was going to sew it with the machine, but I had issues with my machine and sewed it by hand and left spots where I was going to insert the hands, feet, and polyfill. Once the pieces were sewn, it was time to cut them apart and then flip them right side out, insert the hands and feet, and stuff them with polyfill. When I sculpted the feet earlier, I left a little divot at the top, and that was so I could fill it full of hot glue, and then in that divot just use a lot of string and tie it. That way it was like an extra layer so the feet didn't fall out of the little fabric sleeve that I made. Now that the body is complete, it is time to focus on making her a little jumpsuit. I sketched out a star and then I kind of made a little jumpsuit from that shape-ish and made a muslin mock-up and decided that since it fit and the head went in the little sleeve perfectly, I was going to grab some fabric and start construction. I grabbed a dress that I had that's a hoodie dress. It's made out of velvet and rhinestones, and unfortunately the fabric is not breathable and it makes it really hot to wear, so I decided to make it into just a hoodie instead of a dress and use the bottom half for this outfit. I have more left over, so in case I mess up or I decide to make another doll later on with this little jumpsuit. Let's sew it. Once again, I decided not to focus on fixing my sewing machine and just sew it by hand. I also was afraid I would mess up my machine with the rhinestones on there. And if you are observant and you notice I no longer have a right thumbnail, that is because I broke it, and yes, it hurt, and I appreciate all of those who are worried about how much pain I was in. And now that I have the outfit where I want it, I'm going to start focusing on the head and face. I'm just going to trace this little heart that I drew with pencil with some watered down black acrylic, and then once I get that done, I'm going to go in and paint the head, ears, and neck with a few layers of just matte black acrylic. And now that this is pretty much complete, I'm going to start focusing on the face. And you can see here I'm going in with some soft pastels and it's a little splotchy, and that's because I normally put down a layer of translucent powdery soft pastel just so it can blend easier, and I forgot, so I'm pretty irritated with myself right now. But you know, with these soft pastels, you do several layers, so I have room to fix it. So I'm just going to go in on both eyes, and then I'm going to go around the face, anywhere where I also need to contour it. I started sketching in the irises with watercolor pencil, and I wanted to do a gradation from kind of a darker red into a pink. And the first layer, I couldn't get it even, but I was like, okay, I'll fix it in the following layers. But after I sprayed a few layers of Mr. Super Clear on that, I went back with my watercolor pencils and they would not work. It just was waxy feeling, and I don't know, does anybody else have like issues where they spray some Mr. Super Clear on there and then all of a sudden their watercolor pencils don't work? Please leave a comment and let me know what you've done to alleviate this, because I ended up just abandoning the watercolor pencils and I switched to acrylics, and I got a different look than what I wanted. So please, if you have any suggestions, comment down below. It was at this point I got really irritated and just stopped filming, so sorry about that. I just finished the eyes off camera and then picked y'all back up once I started putting the face paint back on. And so yeah, now we're back and doing the face, and that was actually fun. It was hard because my hands are kind of shaky, and I normally don't do graphic stuff because of that. It's easier for me to be able to do more organic style, but I had a lot of fun with it, and I'm hoping, at this point I'm still pissed off about the eyes, and I'm hoping that once I put the catch lights on there, the drop shadows, and add the gloss layer, that the eyes will turn out, and I think they did. I mean, tell me your opinions in the comments below. You won't hurt my feelings, because I think looking at this right now already hurts my feelings. But that's art, huh? Now that I've glossed the eyes and lips, it's time to gloss up the head, ears, neck, and chest. Like I did with the hands and feet, I'm going to do about 3 layers of the acrylic gloss varnish. And now is my favorite part of every piece, and that is adding the rhinestones. I love rhinestones. I love the sparkle. I love the repetition. I love how they look. So yeah, pretty much any piece I ever make will have rhinestones on them. You can bet. So with this one, I just outlined her face with some clear ones, added some smaller ones to her face. In the end, I did chip off some of the rhinestones on her face and added some of the smallest ones that I had, because I just thought it looked better. And after that, she's pretty much complete with her head, and then we just start her hands and feet, because of course I'm going to add rhinestones to those too. of course, no Batgirl clown is complete without a ruffled collar. I used several layers of plain mesh, sparkle mesh, and some polka dotted fabric, and I cut them at about in layers from about 1.5 inches to 3 inches, gathered them up, and then I did check to make sure that it fit around the neck before it was attached. And before I attach the collar, I do want to attach the head to the body, and I do that by sliding some ribbon through the holes in the front and the back, and I use some hot glue to adhere it to the body at the top, and I'm also going to sew the ribbons down just for an added layer of stability. I do want to take a moment to remind you, if you liked this video or got any value from it, please hit the like button down below. And if you are interested in the pieces that I make next, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. And once I get this next sewn on, it will be time to put the outfit together. And oh yeah, I added some fray check just to make sure it didn't come apart. But yeah, let's put this outfit on and I will meet you at final looks. Thank you so much for watching my video, and until we meet again, bye-bye.